Hello and welcome to the boat shop. Today is the 30th of April of 2025. Just thought I'd give you a quick update what's going on. I have been working, and little John has been working a bit on the side of the boat here. We've been getting it sanded and the seams taped, and yeah, in the vein of the only news we got is bad news. Little John's wife had a heart attack last week, so he hasn't been out here much the last 4 or 5 days. Been taking care of his wife. She's doing well. She had some stents put in and is doing well, so yeah, we wish her the best. And John is planning on being back out this afternoon again. And we will continue on. We've got all of the taping on these seams done. The horizontal parts. We got the verticals to do yet, which of course are going to be the shorter, easier ones to do. So I would think, in a week we should probably have all of these seams done on this side of the boat, and there will still be some sanding left to do. Of course, there's always sanding left to do, but yeah, we will get at it and then move over to the starboard side of the boat. So yeah, there's not a whole lot of real exciting work going on now, and there won't be here either. Yeah, and in news on me, there really isn't anything new there either. I've got surgery coming up on the 14th of May, and so I probably won't be doing much for a while after that. We'll just have to see how things go. But in other news, I guess, Little John has decided to take over the boat project in the event that I can't. If I'm not here or just physically can't, he's going to take over the project. And I was at the lawyer's office the other day and I did up a will. So I'm going to leave him some money to finish the boat. And hopefully, if I'm not here, hopefully I am here. Hopefully I'm here for the boat, boat to get finished and get put in the water. But if not, hopefully John will get the boat finished and put in the water, and hopefully he'll shoot a few videos of that too to show you how things turned out. But one of the things I'm going to do with John then now is we're going to shoot a few extra videos talking about kind of the things that I had planned on doing. I got my old plans pulled out here, and I'm going to talk with John a little bit about what my thoughts were on some of these things. And if I'm not here, then it's going to be up to him. He can do whatever he wants. But just give him my thoughts on what I was planning. And some things I've already put in motion. So he's going to have to kind of follow through with what I started. But in other cases, he can do whatever he pleases. But anyway, so I'm going to shoot a few videos. And so we've got a record of that, or he's got a record of that too, of what I had in mind on certain things. And yeah, so you can just go back and look at the videos, and we'll talk about some of these systems and how I had planned on doing them. So yeah, I'm going to shoot some video this afternoon when John's here. We'll set the camera up in a tripod and pull the plans out, and I'll do some drawing, which, good Lord, you don't want to look at my drawings. I'm no artistic abilities whatsoever, but I'm going to do it anyway. So you'll have to bear through that, or just skip over it if you don't want to watch it. But anyway, that'll be some things about me talking about what I had planned to do in the future. What may or may not work, I don't know, but we'll see. Anyway, I'll leave it at that for now, and I'm going to come back at you again this afternoon when Little John is here. Okay, I wanted to talk about the pilot house and the upper deck a little bit. Now, on the plans from George, he's got the pilot house sitting down significantly lower. I made this straight across here, so the pilot house doesn't drop in there anymore. So that means the pilot house, of course, is going to sit up 18 inches higher or whatever, which gives us better visibility. And that was something George mentioned on the plans, or later on, after he had drawn the plans. He thought he would raise the pilot house some. I actually went 18 inches, so that gives us not only better visibility out of the pilot house, but it gives us a lot more headroom in the engine room. Now, the engine room is 8 feet. The pilot house extends 2 feet aft and 2 feet forward. of the
That's 12.
of the opening, 8-foot opening. Anyway, so he had shown it being curved up here.
Mm-hmm.
I was not planning on curving it. In fact, in his book, he talked about that. Well, these curved pilot house fronts look nice, but they're pain in the ass to do. Mm-hmm. So he talked about making them just square, which he didn't do in this boat. In his book, he said that anyway. I was going to make it square, a lot easier to work with.
But you were going to slant the windows back a bit.
Yeah, but what we were going to do is rather than have just a vertical here, we were going to bring this up like this. Bring the pilot house up like this, and so you had your windows slanted at the top forward. And then, of course, you'd need a triangular window in here. Now, as for the glass in these windows, I talked to a glass place in Spencer, and I asked them about it. And they can get pretty much anything we want. And I really had a hard time finding what thickness and type of glass to use in these. The best glass is just tempered glass. Well, the best would be that layered glass, like a car windshield, where it's got the plastic between two layers, but that's ridiculously expensive. And I don't think anybody in boats actually does that. I know there is a company that makes diesel ducts in China. I think it's an American company, but they're built in China. They use 3/4 inch tempered glass on their front windows. I looked it up and I found a document that talked about Lloyd's of London when they insure boats. For offshore boats, they're talking 3/8 inch is like the minimum thickness. So we can go with 3/8. The advantage here is that these ducts have a lot of boat in front of the pilot house. A lot of commercial boats have the pilot houses way up here, like fishing boats and whatnot. So they got more aft deck area to work on.
So they can slam right.
But they're a lot more vulnerable to waves then. We shouldn't be as vulnerable in a duct to waves, and especially if we slant the windows, that also takes some of the pressure off. If a wave would come over, it's not as likely to break the window. So they say. I'm not sure, but I suppose. But anyway, so this is also going to be, keep in mind this is going to be raised up higher. Yeah. And what I wanted to do was, I wanted to build and this is going to be straight across. Whoops, sorry about that. This is going to be straight across here, not curved.
Right.
So I wanted to build like a deck box up here in front of this, in front of the windows. And then right here we would have a propane locker, because our stove is right down in here. So if we have a propane locker in here, it has to be vented, of course, to the outside. But then it wouldn't be a very long run for the hose to get down there to the oven. Probably a locker with 2 bottles in it. You don't need a divider, but probably 2 bottles. Yeah, that would give you a lot of propane. And we're going to have a lot of electric cooking stuff in the boat available too. So you're not going to generally be using propane unless you're in cold weather, or if your electric supply batteries are running low. Right. Okay, and then back here now, behind the pilot house.
Good question.
Yeah.
Would it be like 30 pounders or 20 pounders?
Like 20s. Yeah. Otherwise it would get too high. I was thinking you could also sit on this too, give you a place to sit. Of course, depending on how much forward to bring that window, of course it's going to be higher. So I think there'd still be room to sit here. If people wanted to sit here. But there's going to be a lot of deck area up here. So guy might want to run a shade cloth or something up here. You can put your chairs up here and stuff if you want to socialize out there or whatever. And then back here, you got your mast running behind the pilot house. So the pilot house goes 2 feet beyond, so the pilot house is here, and the mast is going to be here. This side here, I was going to build an enclosure to put the fuel tank, that 100-gallon day tank, in here, and then probably have this lid open, have it hinged and open, so that you can get readily access the tank on the inside. This needs to sit on rubber bumpers of some sort. In neoprene is the thing to use, and I've got some of that. When I installed the main fuel tanks, I put rubber under that, neoprene rubber under it, and that's diesel resistant, and it's solid neoprene, not like a wetsuit foam neoprene. But anyway, you'll need to put some supports under there for that to sit on, so it doesn't get wet and sit in the water. But then you need to use some of those neoprene strips, and they're on that north wall back there on the shelves way in the corner.
The strips for what?
The neoprene strips for setting the tank on.
Okay.
The rubber strips. There's two kinds. There's one that's 1/4 inch thick and one that's like 1/16 of an inch thick is all. But anyway, there's also need to be a box built, and you have to fiberglass it in and whatnot. Couple reasons for doing it that way, for wanting the tank up here. I mean, we could have put the tank inside somewhere or whatever, but if you have, and there's a discharge on the side of the tank, a small 3/8 inch port on the bottom of the tank.
Pipe tubes.
Yeah, I think probably. But anyway, that's what I was going to use to tap off to get the fuel line down into the boat.
Yeah.
People have horrible, horrible, horrible problems with fuel systems if there's just the tiniest leak anywhere. And if you have a system where you're sucking fuel out of a tank as opposed to positive pressure going down to the tank, you suck air into the line. And you get all sorts of problems, and people are out in the middle of the ocean and their engines are cutting out and losing power, and they can't figure out why. And it's generally because they've got a little bit of an air leak. And if you've got a suction system, you don't know that.
Right.
Or if you've got a feed system like this, you're going to get a drip and be able to find it.
Right.
And you won't get the engine cutting out regardless.
Yeah, so it's strictly gravity.
And this is, yes.
Feed to the engine.
Yes, and that's perfectly fine with the diesel system.
Yeah.
To use a gravity-fed, system like that. Now, the top of the tank has got a couple of 2-inch bungs on it. So one of those bungs, what I was going to do is I was going to drill some holes in it to put the extra ports in there. We need a line to fill the tank, coming from our plumbing system inside the boat, which is already set up. It just hasn't run yet. The valving and everything is there. So we need a line to fill the tank, and we need a return line from the engine to go in there, and we need a vent, which can just be a vent, on the top of the tank here somewhere or whatever. Have a hose going up to a vent.
Right.
But what I was going to do is one of those big ports. I was just going to drill it out, and then with a bung, like a 2-inch bung, drill it out for these ports, and then tap them and put fittings coming off a bung or something.
Right. Yep.
And the other one is going to be the fuel gauge. The other 1.5-inch bung or whatever it is going to be for the fuel gauge, which I've already got too. I've already got the fuel gauge and the sending unit for all the tanks.
And the M-dash unit.
Yep.
So sending unit to the gauge then.
Yep. Yeah, I got 3 gauges and 3 sending units. And, okay. Up forward here, I had planned on putting a hatch in here so we could get into this chain locker.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's enough room up there for that. We need to get a windlass in there too. If I've only got 4 feet here, that's not going to be enough room to put a windlass and put a hatch in there. So we're going to need to build a bow roller of some sort, that bolts real well onto the deck. And then I don't know if you want to put 2 of them on there, or have them come maybe like that and like that, or whatever. If the guy wants 2 anchors or just 1, it doesn't matter. But anyway, need the bow roller up there, and then the windlass will have to go in here, and there isn't going to be room. So I think we're going to have to, in this wall, this bulkhead, which is a crash bulkhead, I think we're going to have to cut a hatch in to get at it from the inside of the boat. So that means we're going to need to get a waterproof hatch for that bulkhead. So if we do crash into something, generally going to crash, hit the bow, of course. So if we do poke a hole in the boat, if this floods, it won't flood the whole boat. So, but that hatch that'll have to go in there. It'll have to be a sealed unit.
Yeah. We buy that as a.
Yeah, it'll come.
It has a whole unit.
Yeah.
With the hatch and the
frame.
And a frame and all that.
Yep. And then over here on this side, so we got our fuel tank. This box with the fuel tank in it over here. Over here, I was going to put my AC unit. I was going to put a mini split in the pilot house, and then the compressor or the unit can go here.
Yeah.
On this side of the mast, and then probably a little davit crane, back here that can swing around. Generally, people run their dinghy up here, put some frames or whatever, chocks, permanent frames with chocks,
Yep.
and you can swing your dinghy up on the aft deck. Getting in and out of the boat isn't going to be particularly easy. You can buy boarding ladders, so we're going to be a little higher here now.
Right.
We're going to be 18 inches higher than what this shows. So our water line's here, so that puts us up another couple steps from the water. So you can either buy a ladder that, clamps or bolts or whatever that you can take off, Or we could, if you guys got the time and the inclination, you could design something and, whatever. But so generally speaking, that's the way you're going to board your boat when it's at anchor or, not at a dock.
But right outside the pilot house.
Yeah.
Some red sheet.
Well, that's going to be the lowest point. One thing I was noticing too that this deck area that goes from here, and of course in my boat it goes all the way across. There's going to be a little bit of a change in angle here between this area and the forward area. It starts sloping up a little bit more. So when you build the pilot house, you're going to have to take into consideration that there's a little bit of a. I don't exactly know how you're going to go about that. I don't think it's enough. It's going to be a huge deal. I think if you, put a 2x down here or whatever to frame up on, and then bolt it to the deck, it'll probably bend and lay flat on there. And then as you build the rest of it and put plywood on it and whatnot, it should hold that shape then. So when you pull it off, you can.
It maintains the shape.
Yeah.
It should.
I would think anyway. But okay, that's one set of things I thought I wanted to talk about. Make sense?
Yes. I followed all of that.
Okay. I don't know if there's anything else.
Have you picked out pretty much all of the components? Have you picked out a
No.
crane? Have you picked out a split?
No. They're pretty much all the same.
You know how many BTUs you'd be looking at there? Like just by 5,000 or so?
Oh, no, I suppose probably 12. That's what I've got in my house. It cools my whole house just fine. I think a 12,000 BTU, and then it heats, of course, too. It has a heat pump function.
Okay.
So you can put a little heat in there if you need to on a cool day. But what I'm thinking is if we open this stairway going down into the main cabin is open normally. I'm thinking that cool air is going to want to go down there, and you should be able to, I think, cool at least the saloon part of it.
Yeah.
With that 12,000 BTU air conditioner.
I think so too. Of that size.
So, in the 12,000 BTU units, I have found when they're running, they're normally only drawing 600, 700 watts of power. These mini split units, which is way less than most of these boat, marine AC units will draw.
Yeah, that's.
They have a water pump too. They circulate water to cool them as opposed to air.
Oh. I didn't know that.
And they use it, so they have a pump has to run the whole time
So
too.
is it like it's a marine application one there? The split unit?
What about it?
So is it specifically for marine? That
The one I'm talking about?
Yeah.
No, it's just a regular home unit. But the marine ones will all suck water in for cooling as opposed to using an air exchange.
Okay.
And that runs another pump. So you got another pump running continuously too.
Yeah.
Not only that, you get another water intake and those things plug up and get, it's, I don't know. I'm not, why don't more, I've seen a lot of boats with mini splits on them.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, bigger cruising boats with them on them. Why more people don't use them? Well, sailboats really can't. They don't have the room for them. They don't have a good place to put them and whatnot. Here, but just being protected behind the pilot house, I think it'd be a pretty good place for it. And I think it would probably last. And it's a third the money or a fourth the money of a marine unit. So even if you had to replace it every few years, it'd be cheaper than.
So when you say, what did you say, 700 watts? Is that with everything that you got a condenser fan, and then a blower fan,
Yeah.
and a compressor. Basically, that's it. right?
Well, yeah, I think on the condenser, I think that's all one unit, isn't it? I don't think there's two separate fans.
I think the motor runs the one motor. Yeah.
The compressor runs the fan, I think. I'm not sure, but anyway. It's a lot less power than even like a window unit. Regular window units aren't very efficient either.
No.
These are a lot more energy
I'm
efficient.
trying to remember. I have had a couple of them before that I bought and sold on an auction, like hotel ones.
But like at night, if you want to leave the thing running at night, if it's a humid night, you don't want to. I've noticed it's only running 300 watts, drawing 300 watts at night. So that's
It's basically just being a dehumidifier.
Yeah, it's not doing much, but it keeps the humidity levels down. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where the comfort comes in.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions on that?
I don't think so.
The pilot house is 10 feet wide.
12 long, so you got approximately 120 square feet.
So, it's going to go 2 feet beyond. So it's going to look, something like that. And then there's going to be this 2 feet here. So when you're in the pilot house, your wheel's going to be like, in here.
Yeah.
Your wheel's going to, steering's going to be in here, and you're going to have 2 feet of, this area over here is going to be the steps going down. So that'll be kind of open, but so you'll come in and go down.
And the other part then in front of the wheel, when that clear over to that other side, would be for electronics and anything mechanical.
Yeah, actually the wheel's going to be more left of center.
Yeah, and then that's
And then we're going to have,
hydraulic
the hydraulic pump will be in here, and then
Yeah.
we'll probably have a couple doors underneath there. This is going to be, up here is going to be like, yay high, and this is all just going to be flat area for nothingness.
Mm-hmm.
But then that windshield's going to, of course, come up and out a little bit too, so it's going to, increase that area just a little bit. Yeah, not really, I guess.
And that windshield comes all the way across it, right?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. But yeah, and then trying to route all this stuff out of here down through into the engine room, I suppose, and then to the back of the boat. The hydraulic lines for the steering and whatnot.
Right.
And then of course all the wires and controls and stuff. So we're going to that'll have to come up through here somewhere. But of course you realize now that this area right here is going to be actually down in the saloon. Underneath this is going to be saloon.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So you're going to have to. You might want to put a little bubble out, like for the console, the steering. You might want to build a little bubble out, 6 inches or whatever, so that you've got an area to get down into the pilot house without having to go into the saloon.
Okay.
I don't know.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see.
I like that idea better.
That's something we can deal with when we get to that point, or you get to that point, or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, that's enough of that. Whoops, wrong button.